Coming up on Our World, weeks of devastating flooding kills hundreds in parts of Nigeria while displacing more than 1 million. Why some say the government needs to do more. Plus, life in limbo, why over 300,000 immigrants may lose their ability to live and work in the US. And the unrest in Iran, how the death of a 22-year-old woman has sparked the biggest anti-government protest movement in over a decade. Welcome to Our World. I'm Stephen Walker. Weeks of devastating flooding are taking a heavy toll on Nigeria, killing hundreds and displacing more than 1 million people. Now, some worry the worst is yet to come, and many Nigerians say the government isn't doing enough to help. The Advocate Channel's Larry Madawal has more from Nigeria.
Our community is still submerged nearly a month after the flooding began, with no end in sight. Boats have become the only way to get around much of Bayelsa State in southern Nigeria. The streets have turned to rivers, driving entire communities away from their homes. Mama Obi takes us to what is left of her home. The water is still waist high.
So now suffer with the suffer.
We have really suffered, she says.
Help us.
Tell the government to help us.
I beg. Tell them make them come help us. Not be only me, people where they suffer plenty,
Everything you own is here under the water in this your house.
Yes, clothes, everything.
Some are living rough on the streets, washing with this water, cooking with it, and bathing in it.
Even though people's homes and businesses and livelihoods are already submerged, it's still raining, and there's more expected. The Nigerian government is warning this could go on through November, so even more of this.
This is Nigeria's worst flooding in a decade. Aniso Handi has remained in his house through it all.
Nigerians are used to managing. If not, we would have all died. We have not seen a situation where people are not cared for. But Nigerians care for themselves. We are just like infants that have no father, no mother.
The feeling of abandonment runs deep here. Victims are disappointed with the Nigerian government's response, which hasn't declared the flood a national emergency.
We're not very comfortable, and I fear for my children, may they not go sick.
We're next to the local cemetery, and residents have reported seeing bodies floating here in this water. This flood has displaced not just the living, also the dead.
The floods have affected 33 of Nigeria's 36 states, partly due to well above average rainfall. Bayelsa is among those cut off from the nation, with major highways underwater. The situation has been exacerbated by poor drainage infrastructure and an overflowing dam in neighboring Cameroon. But with a warmer climate causing more intense rainfall, authorities have also blamed it on climate change, angering some Nigerians. In this community, though, there are more short-term consequences.
So you're worried about the children mostly?
Yes, my children, them, no, they go school again. No way, now that thing, they pin me.
It's a tough life to navigate for humans and animals alike, but life must go on.
According to experts, the lack of resources in Nigeria is one reason the area is unable to build dams specifically designed for flood control. In the United States, hundreds of thousands of immigrants in the country may be in legal limbo after settlement talks fell apart between attorneys and the Biden administration. The case stems from a 2018 lawsuit against the Trump administration. Temporary protected status protects migrants from several countries that have been hit by extreme conditions. The Trump administration moved to end protections for the majority of migrants under the program, arguing the initial conditions aren't there anymore. The settlements talks to continue protections under TPS had been going on for more than a year before they recently collapsed. Attorneys say unless there's action by the court of the Biden administration, 337,000 migrants could lose status and be deported. Nationwide protests in Iran have intensified as mourners mark 40 days since the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. Her death triggered a moment of reckoning for the regime's severe restrictions on women's rights. The Advocate Channel's Nada Bashir explains how the movement has grown into so much more.
The final resting place of Mahsa Jina Amini, a place of mourning and now of protest. Amini's name has become synonymous with a movement that is posing the biggest threat to the Iranian regime in years. Sparked in the wake of the 22-year-old's death while in the custody of Iran's notorious morality police, detained for allegedly contravening the country's strict dress code. But now, as the Iranian people commemorate 40 days since Amini's death, a significant marker of both mourning and remembrance, the movement has grown to become something far more wide-reaching than its initial call for women's rights.
It was a protest that quickly turned into a movement and an uprising. And some, of course, say that there's definitely components of beginning parts of a revolution.
And how important is Mahsa Amini's legacy in really driving forward this protest movement?
Gina's death was a sparkle that led to this mass fire, right, that we're seeing throughout the country. That initial protest was not even about hijab. It was, of course, about that, but that is much more than that. It's about body autonomy. It's about gender equality. It's about basic rights.
Amini's death is now remembered alongside a growing list of women and young girls who have lost their lives at the hands of Iran's security forces. Though authorities deny responsibility, disregarding the mounting evidence of the regime's brutal and deadly crackdown on protesters.
We have use of paintball guns, shotguns with metal or plastic pellets, and also instances of use of assault weapons, assault rifles, Kalashnikov-style weapons, or even handguns that have been documented.
This in addition to the mass detention of hundreds, if not thousands, of protesters. 6 weeks on, however, and the movement isn't losing steam. With protests gripping the country's universities and high schools, and strike action by teachers, business owners, factory workers, even oil refinery workers, the backbone of Iran's economy. The call for reform and for regime change is only growing louder.
As a deforestation crisis reaches its breaking point in America, officials roll out a massive and ambitious plan to replant more than 1 billion trees across the nation. But how exactly do you plan to tackle this monumental environmental task? The Advocate Channel's Jeremy Roth explains.
The annual arrival of autumn colors across the land is a reminder not only of the living beauty of America's forests, but also the vulnerability of this natural resource, which now more than ever is fighting for its very survival. Wildfires are responsible for the destruction of millions of acres of forested land in the U.S. It's a problem that David Lytle of the U.S. Forest Service says has reached a breaking point.
We are facing a wildfire crisis in the U.S. Wildfires are growing in both size and intensity. They're becoming more difficult to fight. And as a result of wildfires and our limited resources, we end up with a backlog of about 5 million acres of land on National Forest System lands that are in need of reforestation.
Now, seeds of hope in the form of federal legislation called the Replant Act that couldn't have come at a more pivotal time. The bipartisan act not only delivers a much-needed infusion of funds and resources, but also sets an ambitious goal of planting and regenerating more than 1 billion new trees on U.S. soil over the next decade.
Replant has been a game changer and is really going to allow us to address the wildland fire risk issues, to address climate change, and to address our reforestation backlog.
But more than 1 billion trees? How exactly is a monumental task like that executed?
We will be expanding our operations, hiring new people, and doing more work on the ground. Moving forward is going to take collaboration, cooperation, and partnership.
So what can the rest of us do to help?
You can plant a tree in your own yard. You can work with your community to help plant trees in communities. You can work with nonprofit organizations. You can volunteer. All of us have a role to play in reforestation.
I'm Jeremy Roth, reporting.
Thanks, Jeremy, for that reporting. From 1990 to 2010, the United States lost an average of nearly 1 million acres of forest each year. The Out 100 is officially here, recognizing and honoring 100 of the most influential figures in the LGBTQ+ community. This Out 100 is the most unique and diverse ever, put together from members of media, Hollywood A-listers and social media stars. Cover stars include Ronan Rubinstein and Rafael Silva, and the old gays of TikTok. Visit out.com for the list of honorees and their powerful stories. Thank you for joining us for Our World. The Advocate channel is streaming now on Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV and Android TV. You can also download our app on your Android and Apple devices.